Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the pan fishing world, and specifically Arizona. So, uh, I've been asked a few things, the whys and hows of why I do things the way that I do. Um, I've gotten into that in a couple videos. Excuse me while I drink some of this really delicious elixir of yum yum. That's so good. Anyway, I was asked a few things. Uh, I've been specific in videos before on why I have Pansassin, which is currently down. I have to have the rod tip replaced. I'm probably going to go midday on Saturday after fishing, and got to talk to Ron about that. I wasn't able to go this last weekend. And they're the reasons that I have the philosophies that I do, the kind of equipment that I have. For example, and if I get on a boat, it's probably going to be different. I'll probably end up getting tackle boxes and hand tying a bunch of my own jigs like I used to. Getting a bunch of curly tails, a bunch of jig heads in bulk. Right now, I get in fairly small amounts comparatively to a lot of people. For example, all of my crappie and panfish stuff right now is in this pack. That's it. I have a well, let's go through the pack real quick. First off, I had to clean this thing because it was just nasty. Unfortunately, it was in a Ziploc, and I left it out in the sun too long. But what it is it's the Fish Sticks brand shad. I like the lipstick style scents because I feel that they sit on the lure longer because they're a petroleum based. This one has, well, first of all, it says not for human consumption, so that leaves the Tide Podders out, huh? It has an anise oil, fish oil, and salt. And it is endorsed by Kevin Van Dam. So he puts this on his shad type lures. I rub it fairly liberally. I want to cover my scent as much as possible. And a lot of times, I'll even wash my hands of things in the water at the shoreline of the water I'm in so that I smell, or whatever I'm touching smells as close to the natural environment as possible. And that's actually upped my bite rate quite exponentially, by the way. So in the front pouch of this one, and I just reorganized too, I have my size 6 mosquito lights when I'm using smaller shad. I have my size 2 mosquito lights. These are for bigger bait and also drop shot. And then I actually have some unbranded, I believe these are size 10, the size 8 fly tying hooks. I bought a whole package of stuff from a friend of mine that was a former fly tyer. I got massive amounts of hooks, like thousands of hooks. And so if it's real minute bait, I'll put them on that as well. I have size 10s also. So I keep a fair variety of hooks, but all in that small range. I have a eBay utility blade. I actually use this for jobs for cutting boxes because I typically work in a warehouse environment. I have these floats. If you know, you know. If you're doing 1/32, 1/64, or just a shad with no weight, perfect indicator for crappie. And that's it for this front pouch. And I try to keep things, I'm trying to keep things as organized as possible. I've had a tendency to be a very utilitarian, just carry a pack at a time. I'm not a fan of carrying more than 2 rods max at a time. There's just basic philosophies I have. I mean, this pack is a good example of that. Second bigger pocket, I have my spool of 6-pound Vanish leader. It varies what brand I have. This particular one, I have plenty left over of it, so I'm using it right now. Spare slip float. It's not the brand I typically use, but it works pretty decently. a spare blade. This is the Office Executive CRKT. It's a Hazatsu blade. It's great for real small work. I've cut up small shad with it. It's worked pretty good. And a assortment EvoClaw of the smaller miniature sizes of split shot. That rounds out this pocket. And the only thing about losing the rubber band for this spool is that it tries to unspool on me when I'm putting it in the bag. It's kind of a pain in the butt. It tends to hang out of the bag. So pardon me for a second. You know what? I'm gonna cure this right now. I'm right in front of this camera right now and I've got a perfect blade to fix this issue. That's just hilarious. A little bit more than that. Well, that backfired, so never mind. Excuse me for a second while I cure this issue. And, you know, I tend to try to only keep what I need. Shad's gonna go in that pocket. The other thing that I do with my bags is if I have a double zipper, I always zip to the middle so it doesn't have the potential to fall out of the side. I've had that happen on the water. It really sucks. And then I've got the bigger middle. So the bigger middle, I'm not gonna take everything out. This has got all my jig heads. My stop knot rubber bits, swivels, miscellaneous. I've got some Z-Man micro finesse stuff in here. I've got all my current packs of the fork tails from Raymond Ramirez. So that's that one. And then in the very back, I've got all my curly tails, my current ones. I'm probably gonna go to the Bass Pro tomorrow and pick up more curly tails. I've actually got quite a few from Raymond right now still, so I don't know if I'm going to. I've got a lot of curly tails, but I do need more conventional jig heads. I tend to get my jig heads from Matthew Picklesimmer of AZ Leadworks or Raymond Ramirez from Rocky Mountain Custom Jigs. The ones I get from Raymond are typically ones that are already fully painted, eyed, just easier to go ahead and start fishing with, but I currently don't. And then in the back of my pack, I have my bigger pack that has I still have a bunch of these from AZ Leadworks. The size 4 J hook, but it's a 1/16 hammerhead. They're great universal head. They move a certain way in the water. I've got some of the Z-Man micro shads. They work pretty damn good. And then I've got an assortment of all of the fork tails with the 1/64 heads. And it's one of the things I want to talk about because somebody asked me, again, I've already explained this, why I have such a small hook. Well, look how small the hook is. They don't notice the tackle, they notice the bait. So they have more of an aptitude for just taking this in because they think it's an easy meal. What happens with such a small, a big body on such a small head is that it has a tendency to, excuse me for a second. Well, now that's interesting, huh? Sometimes things happen in the interesting ways. I'll have to go through that. What happens is when they hit, it gets right here in this top lip, but it's so small that what happens is it goes in and there's no space in between the body and the hook, and it actually pins it really, really good. So that's why I do it that way. It's for a very definitive reason. I'm very curious as to why this happened. Excuse me for a second, because that's just really odd. Interesting. I guess I'm gonna have to figure out what happened with that because I don't see any part of the body missing, and it's a single color. So, oh, I know what happened. Okay, so see how that is? I pinched it off with the box. That was interesting. Very silly. So I've got different colors, and I'm going to get into the colors now too. I'm kind of moving stuff to the side as I go along. First one is it looks dark. It looks lighter than it really is with the light, but it's a fairly dark purple with the silver and light flake. Tends to look a lot like shad to them. They hit this actually fairly readily when they're, excuse me, when they're at least semi-willing to bite. And it's not a pensive strike when they hit it. It's pretty authoritative. I got to replace this body, but the regular ubiquitous monkey milk, this is more of a transparent version. Raymond does make a traditional, more white monkey milk. I'm probably going to order more of those from him. We got the confetti style. It's got the multiple differences of flakes. This actually works really good in muddy water, by the way. Really good in muddy water. Got a more muted purple top. It's just the flake and clear with some silver to it. Works really good in fairly dirty water. One of the things that happens when I leave these in the pack for a while is they start kind of get misshapen, so I got to take my lighter and just kind of flash it over it to let them straighten back out. But I always keep a couple of each in my pack. This one is that same transparent with that purplish flake, but it's also got a chartreuse tail. That one, when it gets hit like thunder. I mean, man, when it gets smacked, it's unmistakable how well it gets hit. I'm going to get into the rod thing in a minute. One of my favorite colors of all, though, is the straight white chartreuse. There's something about this color, no matter what the water clarity, what the tone of the water is, it gets hammered. I mean, I've got like 5 or 6 in this pocket. I've got one of my hammerheads that's torn up, curly tail. I've actually got to throw that away. I cull every now and then, go through my pack and throw stuff that's just not going to work away if it's outlived its usefulness, so to speak. I find that for me that doesn't happen very often. There's a lot of times where I'll switch a bait out and I'll put this in the pack and then I realize I've already got one on. I mean, there's all the ones that are white and chartreuse, for example. Everybody knows that color. That one works really good too, by the way. Oh, look, extra tails. Go figure. What are you doing in there? See, I got random shit laying around that I got to cull through my pack like every time I go on a trip because I forget about stuff I put in it. On the other side, I have baits that are rigged up with Matthews AZ Leadworks 1/32 pillhead and 4 sickle, and I've got a few of them already rigged up. This one is the orange flake chartreuse. You already know what color that is. Those two work really good in muddy. I've got one of his heads with one of Raymond's curlies in the fire tigerish type look. Works really good. One with the transparent monkey milk. Works really good. That one lost its tail apparently. That would be why it's over here. See, this is something that, this is a good thing to point out. Every now and then, and it's not Raymond's fault, I keep my pack in the heat here in Arizona, and sometimes the soft plastics separate if they're done separately in 2 different molds. So I just put it back in, either super glue it or do it with the lighter, either way. So that's going to get fixed. No fault of his whatsoever. That's all on me. That one's going to get tossed out. That head's got worn out paint. And, you know, the list continues. I have, I believe it's a VMC. It's kind of getting worn out and chipped, but it still works. Got the willow on it. Got a curly on it. got the assortment of, oh look, there's other size tins. Assortments of the same twist tail. I like the fork tail more than stingers. I find that for me, they get hit better. I think that their motion is in a kind of a way that they like. Now this is what I was trying to show you as far as the color goes. This is kind of a variation on minnow or monkey milk. It's heavy white and black flake in just literally a clear body, but it's got a really distinct look to it. And in clear water, this is actually really saucy, man. They love this thing in clear. I got a couple of hand ties that are kind of poofy that, you know, if I get the inclination, I throw them, and maybe they work, maybe they don't. They're just fool around ones. I wasn't really being serious with them. So that's another one of my deals. It goes in the back of the pack. And it gave me a chance right now doing this video that I could cull out some of the stuff I didn't need. But I can literally put this over my shoulder. I can carry it by hand. I can put it in my 5-gallon bucket along with my cast net, my aerator, and walk shoreline. I can put it literally on my back like the backpack it is and take a rod and walk shoreline, drop it off when I need something. Its versatility is priceless, and it was like $17 on eBay. Phenomenal pack. Yum yum. And gassy. So that brings me to the rod. So with Pansassen, the reason that I really had that rod specifically made was a couple reasons. One, I bought off the rack for years. In fact, the Laguna that I'm using right now is off the rack, but it's a phenomenal rod for a $50 rod. It was a Big 5. I spotted it. It was 2-piece. It was 7 foot. It was in the range that I wanted for action. I tried it out on the floor. The bend was the parabolic I like. I don't like the handle at all, but it is comfortable. It's just not like Pansassen is. But I got Pansassen because of my concept of the soft set mentality or technique, which is essentially just pulling into the fish, if not letting the fish hook themselves, because of using mosquito hooks or lighter jig heads. Fish, when they hit, especially panfish, can be anything from super elusively gentle to hammerhead shark hit and everything in between. But with crappie specifically, it's either they're just on and there's a weight, which means they've swallowed it, or there's a little tick, which means they barely lipped it, or there's a thump. And every now and then there will be a hammer of Thor, which is fairly rare. Usually it's just that little thunk, the little nip, or it's just weight. Now when I'm using a mosquito hook with shad, more often than not, it's just they're there because they've swallowed the shad. And most of the time it'll sit right about here in the top, not the side, not the gullet, but in the top of the back of the mouth or right in the upper lip. It's very rare for me to get any other kind of hit. But the reason for that is that when I put a shad on, I put it only through its upper lip and not through its brain, just at the front. Now I've seen some people, and with bigger shad I will, go through their nostril because it goes clean across the front of their face. And then they can swim very naturally and still get plenty of water over their gills to stay breathing and swim fairly naturally. I have seen some people hook them in the tail and let them try to swim that way, but I don't think that looks very natural. But from the injured bait fish perspective, I'm pretty sure it probably works just fine. Not something I really agree with, not something that I do. I like the way I like it, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. It's just what I prefer. So the bend in Pansassen is a full parabolic. There's only about a third of that rod that's even backbone, And that is because of the fact that I've got about 20 inches of grip. The grip handle is very skinny cork to 2 flared ends and slip rings. I could have gone with electrical tape or the skateboard, no, not skateboard tape, I'm sorry, the tape for wrapping hockey sticks. I chose slip rings because in Arizona, hockey tape and electrical tape get very melty and hot, and it's very uncomfortable when you burn your hands on a handle. Yeah, if you have a Tennessee handle and you wrap it with electrical tape and you're ice fishing with an ice fishing rod, oh, all day long. Because guess what? It's fucking cold. It's a little bit different. I work during the summertime, anywhere from 85 degrees in the morning all the way up to 122 in the shade. That doesn't work so well. The slip rings, once they're in your hand, tend to cool off or even out to the temperature of your skin. It's kind of nice. Even though they're black oxidized, they still don't get hot like other handles do. So that's why I have that rod, to let that soft set type of mentality happen. It's worked very well for me. I like a lighter rod in general for most fishing. Only heavy duty rods I have are my catfish and carp rod, and my heavy cover for throwing Texas rig into the reeds at Saguaro. It's really the heaviest stuff I got. Other than that, I've got a finesse spin rig that is a North Fork blank 7'2" that I had handmade into a finesse rod. It's a phenomenal rod. God, it's so sexy. A rod is so fucking light, so sensitive. It's got a great semi-parabolic fast tip. I've got attached a load 1000 to it, and it's less than a pound. I can hold that thing all damn day, and I can use it for bass with finesse, Ned, and drop shot, or I can use it for crappie, and it'll handle the bigger crappie. I have 10 pound to 6 pound. It's Power Pro and Daiwa J Braid, J Fluoro, although I ran out of that, so I'm currently using the Easy Cast right there, the Berkeley Vanish, which is working okay as a leader. I would spool a whole spool with it. But for me, once I get another dedicated crappie rod, I'm going to get a longer one for jigging off a boat. I will be probably doing, probably doing 8 to 6. More than likely will be vicious high vis braid to vicious high vis mono. I may not do fluoro for that rod, because for crappie I kind of like fluoro because it has some stretch to it. And one of the reasons that I do soft set is that I don't want to abuse the panfish. I mean, even with bluegill and tilapia, even as hard as their mouths are, you can really damage them. So unless you're taking them home, which I'm starting to do now, you can really hurt them, and it's not cool. This is where we get to the point of the deal with Arizona ponds. Now, other ponds in the country have defined thermoclines because they are so deep for their size of body of water. There are a lot of other ones that are in the world, especially in the country, especially like in the deep south, that are shallow but still have a thermocline because they have a lot of vegetation in the water, which puts off oxygen, so there's defined areas that there is no oxygen. A lot of the ponds in the valley don't really truly ever get a thermocline. They'll get rotting stuff on the bottom, but they don't really get a thermocline because the entire body of water is hot. So I think the only reason that our ponds here in the valley are oxygenated still and not just all thermocline is because of the bubbling systems that most of them have. There are some of the ponds that are fairly deep. McQueen, Freestone, are fairly deep. McQueen's like down almost 18 feet in some spots. I know, I've counted it down. Those I can imagine probably have some level of thermocline, but not a lot. A thermocline is the thing that I would imagine bigger bodies of water like our bigger lakes might have. I don't think that they really exist in the way that we would conventionally think of a thermocline in the regular ponds around the valley and the communities. The reason I say that is because their acreage of water to their depth is relatively small. Some of the newer ones, the 2 or 3 that have come over in the last 5 or 6 years, they're fairly big comparatively to some of the older ones. Tempe Town Lake being an exception because it's considered a lake because of the size of the water it is. It definitely does get a thermocline. Even though it's fairly shallow, the body of water is fairly big for the area that it is in. They literally took a whole section of Salt River and chopped it off and made it a locked body of water. So amazingly diverse amount of aquatic life in that pond. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because with crappie specifically, especially in Scottsdale, which is where I do a lot of my crappie fishing pond-wise, during the summertime, they're kind of all over because the entire body of water is hot. They don't really ever get very comfortable. Those ponds also have a tendency to either be very clear or very muddy. There's not a lot of in between. It's one of the reasons that I don't ever fish chaparral anymore, is because it's either really clear and they've chemically treated it with a disgusting color dye that they use. The point of fact, Scottsdale City, if you're listening, kills fish, not the other way around. Doesn't go, hey, we love you, we're going to keep you alive. It kills fish. It's nasty shit. And people eat fish out of that water and they say it's safe and they're full of shit, okay? That stuff is nasty news. It's either that way or it's just choked with weeds. Now, right now, every place I've walked on there has been choked with weeds. I tend to fish Indian School in Hayden Pond because it's pretty good. It's got some pretty damn good crappie and it's got some massive tilapia in it, by the way. Or there's another one near Chaparral that I go to that it can be really on or off. It really depends on the day. So all of the thing that I've seen exhibited from me throwing these little soft plastics and the shad is that they're in multiple modes of suspension, which crappie do suspend. Now, one of the things that does happen with crappie and bluegill to a fair extent during the summertime, and yellow bass on the bodies of water that have them, is that it gets so hot they literally dig down in the mud, the muck on the bottom. I have pulled crappie out of a couple of ponds and bluegill that have had dirt on their bellies because they've literally channeled themselves down into the dirt because of how uncomfortable they are. This precludes me to want to fish my baits as slow as physically possible to give them a chance to react to whatever it is that's passing by them. They have to be motivated enough to hit what they want to hit. It's just that way as far as I see it from what I've experienced. I have drop shotted size 6 with small saw plastics, in particular the Euro Tackle Fat Assassin, little 2-inch, got a real twitchy tail on it, and black and white are phenomenal for all types of panfish, especially red ear and bluegill. I fished at Dawson Ranch since I was a kid. There was on Lake 7, which was the one off of the 101 and between Baseline and Guadalupe for a long time, a very good population of red ear. They got over 2 pounds. It was like fishing havasu. But there were 2 algae kills a couple years ago. That pond has not recovered yet, and I don't think that it will because Dawson Ranch HOA doesn't give a shit. They don't take care of their ponds anymore. They used to take care of them very well. They don't. But I used to drop shot a 18 to 24 inch leader from a 1/8 weight, which was heavier than I wanted, but it pinned the bait suspended, and went up another almost 2 foot to a micro swivel that was on my leader, and it was to braid. Killed the red ear on that thing. So had to still go very slow. I used to also put mealworms on, because I would get the super worms from the reptile center for 100 for like $10. Why go to a Big Five or Walmart and get that little white tin that you're not even guaranteed a certain amount? They go by weight for like $4 or $5 when I can go spend 10 and get 100 or an even 120, depending on what reptile store you go to. Just a little clue for you guys: if you're going to throw mealworms, get the super worms from the reptile center. You buy in bulk, you'll save money. You can keep them for a long time. I tend to keep the container they come in, and take small pieces of apple or cucumber occasionally. It's got a little bit of moisture, it draws them up, they eat it. Throw in cornflakes, they eat that too. If you don't, they tend to start eating each other. But I've kept a thing of 100 for a month and just gone through them, whenever I've gone out, and it's lasted. So just little things. But the big key thing for me during the heat of the summer in this state on the ponds, regardless of whether I'm going for bass, crappie, bluegill, red ear, yellow bass, whatever it is dead ass slow presentation. Whether I've used Ned, drop shot, curly tails, underspins with curly tails for yellows, the slower I've gone, the better a response I have gotten. And I believe that it is because there's really not a true thermocline in these ponds. It's just all hot, and they just don't like to move. But when you get them on, they let you know they're pissed off about what you just did. And that's kind of what I wanted to discuss. The rod, I will get a little bit more into this real quick. The reasons that I started getting custom rods is because I was never satisfied with what I got off the rack beyond a certain extent. They were utilitarian tools to me for the sport of fishing, but I like comfort when I use things. So the first rod that I got was a drop shot rod that was on a St. Croix blank when you could still buy the blanks. It was a fairly heavy rod, but it was a great drop shot rod. It's in the hands of one of my friends now. I got an ultralight made after that was a 7'2" light for ultralight fishing. A rogue tilapia hitting a piece of corn. Decided to take about 4 inches out of the tip of that. I got it repaired, gave that rig to a friend. They were both very, very comfortable. And then I got Pansasson. It's $150. Now it'd be about $300 because of inflation. But it's a 2-piece, 7'6", 2-weight fly blank I had made into a spin rod. After that, I got the last rod I had made, which was the one that was for finesse bass fishing that I also used for crappie. And I gotta tell you, people, the thing with getting a custom handmade rod is if the person's local, you can go to them and get everything hand fitted. You can tell them how you want it to be done. And it's a game changer because it literally changes the way you fish. Even if you go back to having something off the rack, you're still going to fish differently at that point because you've now felt a different level of equipment. The Laguna that I'm using right now, once I get my Pansasson fixed, I'm still going to have that Laguna as a slightly heavier crappie rig because it is a slightly heavier action than Pansasson is. So I'll put say 6-pound braid to 6-pound fluoro on that. And that will be maybe my brush pile rod. So I'll have Pansasson, I'll have that, and then I'll have my Bass Finesse rod that I can use for other crappie techniques or bass. So I try to keep it as simple as possible, and it's worked very well for me. So I hope that gives a little bit of clarity. I like to walk shoreline. I don't like to carry a lot of shit. I see people that have golf carts worth of shit, or a tackle box that weighs 80 pounds on their back. You don't need all that shit, guys. You don't. I see people that have lure is tied on 5 different rods, and it's because they simply don't want to retie. Take the 2 fucking minutes to retie, for God's sakes. Jesus Christ, man. It's not a lot of effort. Save yourself the wear and tear. Take it from somebody that's got bad fucking joints and a sciatic right now on my right side that's out so bad I can barely fucking walk, by the way. I'm still going on the shoreline. You know why? Right here. See that? That's it. That's all my crappie shit. And 1 fucking rod, guys. 1. I stick that in a 5-gallon bucket with a fucking bubbler from Fraybill and a catch net for the bait fish. And that's it. My cast net gets in there. The thing weighs maybe 20 pounds. It's easy as fuck to carry. And if it really comes down to it, I can put this over my shoulder and make it even lighter. And then I have live bait accessibility because I've got my cast net. And if I don't want to use my cast net and I just want to take a few jigs with me, guess what? I can take the shit out of this bag and stick it in my cargo pockets. So then I'm not taking any of this shit with me. Simplify your fucking fishing, guys. I'm telling you, I used to carry so much tackle that I couldn't walk a shoreline. And I thought it was the deal, man. I thought I was doing it to it. And now, every time I go to the chiropractor, oh, guess what? You've shrunk a millimeter of this or that because your spine is starting to compress. You know why? Because I did too much shit in the past. This is part of that. So please, simplify your shit. Think about what you're doing before you go on your fucking trip. I mean, if you're getting on a kayak, that's one thing. You can take the stuff out of your vehicle, put it on the kayak. As long as you're not going over the weight level of the kayak, you're okay. But when you're walking shoreline, if you're going on somebody else's boat, if you're trying to tag along with somebody, it doesn't do you any good to have 15,000 pounds of tackle, and then they look at you like you're fucking nuts because you're on the back of their boat with 10 fucking rods. Just don't do it. Don't fuck up your body for the sake of fishing. Fish smarter, not harder. It's kind of an adage that goes a lot of ways, huh? Work smarter, not harder. And yet people still drag pounds and pounds of shit around. It doesn't work. Eventually that shit will catch up to you. Simplify. This thing right here weighs maybe 3 pounds. It's a decent sized bass worth of weight. I'm sitting here, I can pinky this thing easily. Look at that. I'm not even fucking trying. And I'm old. Simplify.